Bloody hell. Look at that. The admit all button is breaking. There's so many people. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight in our first expert lock-in, LMPG expert lock-in since January. We've kind of put a bit of a pause to this as we set up for the summit, which is happening this weekend on Saturday. So if you're in the Birmingham area, don't forget to get a ticket for that, although there's very few remaining now. Very quickly, for those that have not been on a lock-in summit before, my name is Anthony Bailey-Grice. I'm the MD of LMPG. We are joined tonight by Cam Dovedie of Premier Property Education. Cam's done a couple of webinars for us in the past and is quite often doing kind of masterclasses and that kind of thing down at the London HQ, and I think probably virtual as well, but I'll get to Cam in a second. I'm getting ahead of myself. When you join, you will be greeted by an American lady here who will say that the webinar is being recorded. It's being recorded to be put onto our website, LMPG's website, after the fact. So you will be able to view the full recording in case you've got to shoot off at any points. But it also means that everyone on this meeting also has a chance of being recorded. So if you don't want to be recorded, then by all means, anonymize yourself, turn your video off, whatever else you need to do. But if you don't mind being recorded, then I'll be quite happy to see some beautiful faces, because at the minute I'm staring at a bunch of names on a screen, and it's just me. It feels like it's just me in the room. We do have a chat box for any questions throughout tonight, and I'll just pop something in there now. Hello. So if you've got any questions as Cam's speaking, then feel free to pop them in there and I will ask them on your behalf. Oh, hello, everyone. I will be asking kind of the more pertinent questions to whatever it is that he's saying as we go across. So if you mishear something or you misunderstand something, you just want to quickly clarify, then I'm happy to do that. But if it's a broader question, we'll have a wider Q&A toward the end of the session as well. So we've got about half an hour to 45 minutes of Cam, and then we've got some space for questions. And I'm glad to see Alistair, and there was another person as well, finally some faces to enjoy. So a little bit about Cam then. Oh, hello, Janet. Hello, Neil. They're all joining now. You've really set a precedent there, Alistair. Cam is the founder of Premier Property Group. He's got more years in property experience, get this, more years in property than I have at being alive. He's been in property for 30 years and I am currently 29 years old. So he's outranked me on both fronts. One of his companies is, of course, Premier Property Education, that have a great relationship with LMPG, hence why he's on the webinar tonight. And it's the world's leading education company focusing on UK property investment. And guess what? He's also the author of the best-selling book, Boost Your Pension and Income. He's all over the place. He's done it all. And he's here for his victory lap tonight. Hello, Cam. I see you've joined, you've come back.
Thank you very much for your kind introduction there, Anthony, especially the 30-year part.
Yeah, do you like that bit?
And that you're younger. Thank you very much. Okay, so yeah, so should we jump in then?
Let's jump in. Let's go for it. Do you want to share your screen?
Yeah, sure. Let's just share that.
Yeah.
Here we go. Can everybody just see that? Can just give me a quick thumbs up if you can see that, okay? Excellent. Great. Okay, so let's jump in. And first of all, thank you very much for being part of this and spending your time here and really moving forward in property. And my goal for you today really is to understand that HMOs are a very good strategy in 2023. And by the way, everything I share with you is exactly what we are implementing right now at Premier. So, it's from our grounding of what we're doing now, not just talking about it, we're actually actioning all of this, which is always good to know, isn't it? And also, how this can work for you, even as we head into the depths of a recession, and how you can make HMOs work for you if you're new to property. Just out of curiosity, who's actually new? If you just type in the chat box so I can gauge this according to you. If you're new or newish to property, you're most welcome, by the way. Just type in the word yes or me, That's you. Okay. And if you are, you have some experience in property, that's always good to have some experience. Good to see people with experience in the room. If that's you, just type in the word experience.
I think you'll find, Cam, that we've got only the creme de la creme here tonight. Look at all this experience.
Lovely. I mean, I love experience in them. It's always good. And as an experienced investor, one of the things I tend to do is carry on learning, because that's really important to upskill. And let's discuss more. So, if you're experienced, if you're new to the HMO world and you're feeling a little bit stuck right now, how do you get started? How there's a lot going on, the legislation, the renters reform bill, and all the rest of it. There's a lot going on, isn't there? How do you actually start correctly? Because it can get really confusing. And if you're an experienced investor, feeling a little bit stuck right now, what do you do with your portfolio? How can you move forward? How can you advance in your property career and get some peace of mind with property? Well, this is what we're going to be discussing. So let's jump straight in. Now, what I'm going to be sharing with you is elements of our Premier Property Accelerator Blueprint. Now, you can see it right in front of you right now. Feel free to take a photo of this if you wish. Now, there are lots of components to this. So, of course, we're not going to be able to discuss all of it today. However, we're going to be jumping into and deep diving into the key elements. Hope I'm making sense for you so far. Do keep it's lovely that you're engaging with us in the chat box and so do keep asking questions. We'll be doing questions at the end, I believe, Anthony. So we'll be answering questions as well, and I'd love to hear your comments as well. So it's not just me talking at you. Let's do this together. Let's have a conversation, albeit through the chat box. Okay, so let's do that. So here is our accelerator blueprint. So let's jump into some of this. Now, what we're covering isn't all of this, because we will definitely need more than the 45 minutes or so that we've got today. So what we're going to do is we're going to deep dive into some of this, and I'm going to share with you these three key parts that you can see on the screen that have just been highlighted. So let's jump in. Now, it's always important to know why you're getting into something, isn't it? Why are you actually getting into this particular strategy? Well, the truth is, we're all aware of legislation being increased. We're all aware of interest rates rising. We're all aware, aren't we, of the recession looming, and of course the inflation rising, even though they're telling us now that it's just below the double digits. So why are we now jumping into HMOs? Well, there's a number of reasons. The first thing is, the thing is right now, people are selling off properties that are in the best pitches, the best positions possible in the areas are being sold off right now, which are HMOs. So anybody here played Monopoly? If you have, just type in the word yes, if you have. It's okay. Lots of you saying yes, and some of you we're getting to know each other. That's okay. So yeah, so play Monopoly. So in Monopoly, where do we go? We go straight for Mayfair, don't we? If you land on Mayfair, you want to buy Mayfair. The thing right now is, in the property world, people are selling off their Mayfairs, which doesn't normally happen. However, it is happening right now. And I'll share with you, a real practical example of this. What do I mean by this? Well, here is one of our investment areas. This is focused on HMOs in the Midlands. Now, this is Carlton Road. And this road, you can see, if you look at this properly, you can see the red, the red rectangles. The long rectangles are properties that we've got just on this street. And right opposite, there is a university campus. Now, these streets are so sought after. People don't normally want to sell on these streets. And like what I say, right now, people are selling off Mayfair. And there is seriously massive opportunity. Now, let's keep it honest. We'll have an honest conversation, of course. I'm not make it sound like, everything's so easy out there, because it isn't for the ill-informed investor. But for people like you who are spending their time wisely, it is such a great opportunity as well. For people like you and people like me that are advancing in their career when it comes to property. So it just goes to show, hope you get my point. Right now is a brilliant time, a great opportunity to be buying HMOs in areas and locations and streets where people don't normally want to sell. Hope I'm making some sense for you. Now, let's discuss further, why do you want to jump into HMOs? Well, over the last 30 years, I've been investing in this. And what I've realized is, for what we got right now happening in 2023 and moving forward over the next decade, is that there are 4 key highs to HMOs. That is actually happening right now. Now, the 4 highs of HMOs, the first thing, there is definitely high tenant demand. Now, people are migrating from larger cities into satellite towns. People are in smaller towns looking for accommodation. And we're all aware that in the private rental sector, we are very much needed. No matter what the government does or says, we, as landlords, as investors, are needed because there is a huge demand and there ain't enough supply. And I guess we're all aware of that, right? So there is an even more higher tenant demand, is what we're finding. And also on top of this, there is a high desirability for HMOs to tenants. Now, the key here is, the old HMOs model doesn't work anymore. The model that works right now is all about quality. So quality accommodation is really working right now when it comes to HMOs. So there's tenants are looking for these. They're looking to downsize. They're looking to save costs on where they live. Of course, we've heard that so many times, haven't we? The cost of living crisis. Who agrees with me with that one? I mean, it's every 5 minutes, cost of living crisis, yes? Just type in the word yes if you're with me on this. There's all that going on, isn't there? We're hearing it all the time. So there is that cost of living crisis, unfortunately, for people out there. And the tenants are, no one's a fool. They're looking for places where they can get into ways more cost effective. Now, on top of this, there also is the high stress test resilience for lending. So what do I mean by this? Well, you may or may not be aware, when it comes to financing, there are 2 key tests that are actually done when it comes to the stress testing for how much you get to your loan to value. So one of them I'll share with you right now. You may or may not be familiar with this. And that one stress test is the rental income that's coming in and your mortgage payment that's actually going out. So let's say you've got an interest-only mortgage payment, and that's £1,000 per calendar month. The stress test used to be 125%, one of the stress tests. So just for clarity, what that means is that your rental needs to be £1,250. And if your rental is £1,250, then that is absolutely fine. That's within the stress test because your mortgage payment at £1,000 actually works. Now, there's been a big change in that, and that £1,250 has now gone to £1,450. And more recently, with the projects that we're buying, we're finding that that is now moving up to £1,650. And maybe some of you have experienced this. If you have, just type in me, if that's you. Feel free to join in. Be lovely for you to join in. So that is all happening right now. And this is the big challenge out there, because what that means is if your rental is only, let's say, £1,250, however, your lender is expecting there to be, that's a 165% stress test, well, your mortgage payment needs to drop, doesn't it, to balance things out. Now, when you drop the mortgage payment, what that means is, of course, you will get a lower loan to value. Hope I'm making sense for you so far. Maybe you can turn that on. That'd be good. Yeah. So, hope I'm making sense here, right? So far, right? So this is the big thing. However, when it comes to HMOs, of course, because it's room rentals, you're able to increase the rental, so your rental increases and your stress test actually works for you. So you are able to get a higher loan to value, is what we're finding as property investors and developers. Now, maybe some of you experienced this, or maybe this is giving you a bit of a reality check, and it's giving you food for thought. So for this reason, HMOs are great for this. And of course, as the rentals increase, your fixed costs generally tend to be very similar to buy-to-lets. There's a little bit more, however, they tend to be similar to buy-to-lets. And you have your fixed costs there. And what you'll find is the income that you're creating is much more. So you have a higher cash flow as well. So key tip, what you want is less roofs, and you want less roofs with more income that's coming in, which means you're not having to chase lots and lots of properties. You can get the same result with a less number of properties, if I'm making this clear for you. So these are all great ways, and what we call them at Premier is the 4 highs of HMOs. Now, just to be clear, I haven't started in this today or last year or year before. I actually fell into this by mistake back in 1989. I was 19 years old, and cut a long story short, my cousin wanted to buy a property. They couldn't get onto the mortgage, so they got me in there. And as soon as we bought this property, there was a massive market crash. This is back in 1989. Who can actually remember this, by the way? If you can, just type in the word yes, if that's you. And interest rates back then, not the Bank of England base rate, but the Leeds and Holback Building Society interest rate, which Leeds and Holback Building Society isn't around anymore. that rate back then was over 17.5%, I remember, on one day. So, you know, they were extortionate interest rates. And, you know, as soon as I bought my first property, it felt like I started the whole property market crash, actually, just by buying my first property. That's what it felt like. Now, I fell into this, and I just by chance made that into a HMO, rented out room by room. That's what we did back then. And if you're like me, you like to create systems and processes. And then what happens, I found at the end of the month, my aim was to just cover the mortgage. And I found that actually there was a sum of money left over. So I thought, this is really good. And then, you know, over a little bit of period of time, I did that again, and I did that again. And some would say that, you know, you became financially free within a reasonable period of time. So HMOs weren't called HMOs back then, and there weren't a lot of people doing HMOs back 30 years ago. However, I didn't even know it was a HMO. So here's the first HMO that I actually created. You know, fast forward to today, like I'm showing you, we have a whole system and a process for dealing with HMOs. Hope I'm making some sense here for you. So let's jump in further, and I'll discuss further with you. So just for clarity, so what is a HMO? So you can see it in front of your screen right now. Feel free to take a photo of this. It's always good to be clear, to get that clarity of knowing what things are. You know, sometimes there's this elephant in the room where people nod away. However, no one really knows what's been said. So I always like to make things simple and clear, because simple makes money, if you're like me. So here, this is actually a definition of HMO. So literally, it is more than two people that are unrelated and living in a property, sharing space, and we're discussing normally here bedrooms. So what that means, you got the definition here right in front of you, according to the gov.uk. So more than two is HMOs. Now, the thing about property is, have you noticed that these new fads come along time to time? Who's actually noticed this, by the way? Just type in the word yes if you have. You know, the latest thing, the latest fad, the new thing. The truth is, there's never actually anything new. It's usually the same thing regurgitated and refined in a different way. I don't know if you've noticed that. So what the heck am I on about? Let me explain. So now it's no longer HMOs. The new the new word that's been bandied about, which is you know, very delicious, is co-living spaces. Yes, who's heard of this, by the way? Give me a little hand raise or a yes. Let me know you're alive. Just type in the word "I'm alive." Come on, team, let's do this together. Right? Yeah. Thank you. Lots of you are saying yes, and you're joining in. Interesting. Lisa's saying, I know that road in Manor Park. Yeah. Too right. So now we don't call them HMOs anymore. We call them co-living spaces. So if you say co-living space, you're hip and cool and your tenants love them. If you say HMOs, oh, you're a bit 1970s, and you know, there's a bit of a doom and gloom on that. If that makes sense. And it's a really key point, because you know, the thing is, average doesn't work anymore. Gone are the days when people will just give a mattress or a, you know, just throw something in a room, you know, paint it magnolia with wood chip and expect someone to live there. Those days are gone. And let's be honest, many landlords are leaving the market right now. Who's actually finding that, by the way? Who's finding that many landlords are leaving the market? They're just tired. We're finding there's a lot of tired landlords. The number of portfolios that are landing on my table, on my desk, it's shocking. Yet, if they only looked at professionalizing a little bit further, you know, just weren't stuck in their ways, and you know, just were willing to, you know, upskill a little bit, you know, just get themselves out of the way, what they would find is, you know, they could really keep their portfolios. I mean, many people that train with us, for example, they turn up and it's a case of property doesn't work anymore. And by the end of the day, once they've been with us, it's like, well, okay, you know, there's a number of different avenues that they can actually explore. Hope I'm making sense here. So average doesn't work anymore. And, you know, the time for the amateur investor has gone. But let's be polite. Let's not call them amateur. You know, people that are, let's say, you know, not really upskilling in this stuff. They don't know what they don't know. It's not their fault. And that's what's happening. So the key here, and it's a really key point, is to really professionalize in terms of what you're doing. And it's only the professional people, in my view, that are going to be left in the market. And the government, you know, right or wrong, they are pushing us toward this. The Renters Reform Bill that's coming, that's pushing us towards this. It's making people, whether they like it or not, to professionalize the industry, to be good landlords, and provide a good accommodation. Now, I'm speaking to the people that are already doing this, because clearly you guys are here and you're showing this because you're here. You know, LMPG, you're here, you know, you're professional people and you're upskilling. However, the big hoo-ha out there is the people that are just playing average. So professionalizing is key. And if you're like me, you know, you keep on learning and keep on ongoing learning and then take the action on that and then apply it. And then it tends to work. We always navigate through, don't we? So let's jump in further and let's discuss parts of the HMO accelerator according to Premier Property. So one of the key things that we're going to jump into now is the key tenant profiles. Because one of the things when it comes to HMOs is you might have heard these, you might have seen these emails, right? Where there's people even offering or selling HMOs with 20% gross yield. Who's seen some of those, by the way? You know, 18% gross yield or 20 plus gross yield. If you have, just type in the word yes if that's you. Yeah. Yeah. So, you know, we've seen some of that, haven't we? Right? That's going on. However, the truth is that's 20% for about 2 weeks. For the rest of the time, it's zero. Why? Because they haven't got the right tenant profile. And by the way, been there, done that, don't recommend it. Yeah. So the key tenant profile is absolutely key. So at Premier, we've actually got 4 key tenant profiles that work really well. So I want to run through these with you so you can start thinking about HMOs and also thinking about the occupation, because that's, you know, the occupancy of that property is really key, isn't it? To make sure that you've got those gross yields and more importantly, those net yields, money in your pocket. So let's discuss the 4 key tenant profiles. Now, you may or may not be aware of some of these, and I'm going to go into some of the detail within these on what to look for and why these are great tenant profiles. So the first one is students. I'm glad you like the PowerPoint there. Great. All right. Yeah, students. So students are no longer like the ones you can see on the screen. You know, students right now, they have loans. And, you know, my kids, you know, they work for university, they went to comprehensive school, you know, they've worked through that. You know, they've had to work really hard. And that's the thing, isn't it? So the new students are no longer the students as they used to be. They're quite hardworking. They have a lot of fun. They're hardworking. The thing with students is, what I love about students in your HMOs is that it is a process that you can actually measure. You know when the term starts, you know when the term ends, you know when the new tenants are going to come in, and you know when the term is going to be ending, so you know when they're going to leave, and then the new cycle starts again. So in our experience, when it comes to evictions, we have a very low level of evictions with students because they stay there for the term, for the year, and then they renew. Hope I'm making sense for you here. So that cyclical scenario really works for you, so you can time your success in this. So you know, students do work really well for this reason. Now, one of the key things with this also is that students now require that they have property within 15 minutes walking distance. And that's a real specific, that's really important. Because gone are the days when you could, like what I said earlier on, gone are the days when you could just provide any kind of accommodation. The accommodation needs to be quality. The accommodation also needs to be in a location where your tenants, your customers in effect, are able to commute quite easily. Ease is required. And when it comes to students, they definitely want easy. So 15 minutes, and then we're not discussing 15 minutes how the crow flies, it's 15 minutes walking distance. So if you go onto Google, for example, you know, you can check the distance, and we always look for that circumference of 15 minutes. So rather than being a round circle, it's more like an avocado, if I'm making sense for you. Yeah, so that's really important. So students we love for, as I say, just to summarize, we love for the fact that there's a process and we can actually measure, you know, the income coming in, and we can measure the timeline, which is great. So you know where you are at any given point in time. And secondly, 15 minutes distance works extremely well. So let's move forward to the next type of profile, and that is young professionals. Now, I'm sharing this with you in the order that we do this at Premier. You can choose your specific type of profile. And I would suggest that you really niche into this if you haven't already. You know, look at niching so that you're providing the accommodation according to your tenant profile, because this is key. So you can rent those properties. So young professionals. So now, we're all aware of the professional word that's used so widely, isn't it? So professionals can be blue chip workers, blue collar workers, can be white collar workers. There can be various types. There can be, in the sort of A, B, C socio groups. But when we discuss young professionals, what we're discussing here is that we can really want to deep dive into this so you get the right type of profile. So the young professionals that work really well are the ones that have just come out of university. So they tend to have a degree or two behind their names. What that's done for them is that's sobered them up for life. They're showing that they're competent people and they are willing to work and they have a good work ethic. And that shows that because they've got those degrees. Also, these young professionals that have just come out of university are really good for this because they've already used to and accustomed to living in HMO spaces. So they've already been living in those shared spaces. And now, unfortunately, as we're all aware, there is no job security. You really have to chase that job. You really have to chase that contract. And this is what I love about property. It creates that passive income where it genuinely creates that passive income. So the chasing the job and chasing the contract or having another business becomes a byproduct. I love property, and the investments become really useful for you, of course. So these young professionals, they don't have that job security, so they are having to chase those jobs. So what that means is they relocate wherever the job is. And these are the young professionals that you will find that will be excellent for you when it comes to your HMOs. Hope I'm making sense here for you. By the way, do keep asking questions. We'll pick up on that, I believe, Anthony, at the end, right? So we'll do some of that. So have a look at young professionals. Think about your niche. The next niche I want to share with you is key workers. Now, when we discuss key workers, again, I like what I share with you. It's about niching. And the best ones tend to be the NHS. Now, I know how hard these guys work. My son happens to be a junior doctor. I didn't know how much effort these guys put in. And they get paid, they're paid so poorly. It's unbelievable. And it's not just the doctors. The nurses work even harder. The nurses, and not just the nurses, all the ancillary support team that are required to run hospitals and so on, they are working their socks off and they don't get paid a lot. And of course, with the cost of living crisis, that is happening for them for sure. Prices are going up. And as prices are going up, no one's a fool. People look for places where they are much more economical. Yet they want somewhere where it's a quiet, safe space for them. They also want somewhere which is within, again, that 15-minute walking distance, near to a hospital, near to a major type of clinic. And they are willing to pay more money for a room, whether it's an ensuite or not. They're willing to pay more money for a room rather than be moving into a flat by themselves. And that's another thing. It's not just the money element. It's also the social element. Now, I've interviewed lots of our tenants, and one of the things they say, why do they like our HMO rooms compared to the actual another flat where they're living there by themselves, is the fact of the community, the fact that they've got people around them. And these are usually friends and colleagues that they're working with, at their hospitals. So, another very good niche is NHS staff, and you will find longevity when you have your HMOs with these types of people. Now, we measure everything, and what we find is typically the time length that you will find your NHS staff living in your property tends to be anywhere between 10 months to around 14 months. Now, usually one of two things happens in that time. Either they form a relationship with somebody and they move on and they get a flat so themselves, and then they're living on with their new partner. That usually happens. Or what happens is they relocate somewhere else, so they move on that way. Otherwise, they will stay in your HMO provided it's a quality HMO. Hope I'm making some sense here for you so far. So, if you think about it, there's a lot of strategy behind this. It's quite strategic the way that you look for your tenants and you make your HMOs work. So, number of ways that you can do this. I've shared 3 with you, and I want to share another one with you. Now, the 4th type is benefit tenants. Now, my experience of benefit tenants is this. A lot of people, now benefit tenants in one property as a buy-to-let, absolutely wonderful, works great. We have a number of those types of properties. That's all okay. Within the local housing allowance system, that is fine. You can vet the people, you can get good people that are on local housing allowance. However, when it comes to HMOs, my experience is you find there's usually 4 or 5 people that have a lot of time on their hands, and some of them do have some social issues. Now, they're okay when they're by themselves, but when they get together, can you imagine? Can you imagine the kind of cocktail that you're creating? And in my experience, what usually happens is you move 4 or 5 people in, and it's brilliant for about 2 weeks, and then 4 of them move out. You're left with one, the kingpin, and they will not move out, and they will not let anybody else in. I'm just being honest with you. I'm just sharing with you my personal experience. So unless you are from the military background or from the prison background, or you have that social care sort of capabilities, then I'm a little bit opinionated. My view is you probably don't want to go down that route. However, benefit tenants work really well when your key landlord isn't the actual benefit tenant. When your key landlord is actually the social provider, your social housing provider, for example. Yeah. So, or the local authority, for example, or a local charity that's housing vulnerable tenants, for example. So the key there is you've got that the landlord is the entity that's actually paying you the rent, not the individuals. And your management, in my experience, in these cases, becomes extremely minimal as well. So benefit tenants are a good profile when you use this in the correct way. Hope I'm again making sense here for you. If I am, I'm going on a bit, sharing lots of detail here with you. Just type in the word yes if I'm making some sense here for you so far. You guys are very quiet. Lots of yeses coming through. Dorothy was there first on that one. Yeah. So you get my point. Another deep dive point for you is you might be in an Article 4 area. So in an Article 4 area, challenging to actually get a property where it's a HMO. You have to go for a planning proposal and so on. However, if your landlord is the social housing provider, or it's the council, for example, there will be caveats where those rules are bypassed. So a great way to be getting into Article 4 areas is by looking at these types of profiles. But remember, keeping the landlord to be the social housing provider, if this makes sense. Yes, team? Hope you're following. So think about your appetite, think about what works for you, and start thinking about the best tenant profile that can work for you for the type of HMOs that you're running. Now, each council across the country will have different points of view, and they'll be doing things in different ways. So what we've done here for you, just to make your life easier, is you can actually go onto this link right now. I think it's in the chat box as well, or you can scan that QR code. And there's something for you where it will give you all the lists of all the councils in the country, and you'll be able to look at all the links for the official website, so you can compare like for like. You can find out the nuances between the different councils, because there will be detailed nuances between the councils, and that might even be the same postcode. Yeah, we've got properties where on one side of the postcode it's one borough, and on the other side of the postcode it's another borough. It does happen. Yeah, so it's always good to know which councils are good for this, which councils can work for you, how can you make your life easier, because this is why you're doing this, isn't it? You want a bit of peace of mind, right? Who actually wants some peace of mind? If you do, just type in the word peace of mind, or the sentence peace of mind. Type it in now. I like what you did there, POM.
Nice and easy.
That's nice and short, yeah.
Sorry, I'm trying to get your list of councils here while I was talking to you.
Yeah, no, that's fine. So I believe Anthony's put that in the chat box as well. It's on the screen. You can just take a note of it as well. If you want to do it now, you can quickly do it now. That's totally up to you. And you can start doing your research when it comes to councils. Like what I say, it's all about upskilling. So let's discuss further. In fact, I'll give you a quick 10 seconds, if that's okay, Anthony. Well,
that's absolutely fine.
20 seconds. 20 seconds there, yeah? Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Do you think I could perhaps ask a couple of questions then? Because as you were going through it, we got quite a few about your tenant profiles, which were really, really good, by the way. And I very much enjoyed the references therein. But for A few of them. So let's take key workers, for instance. You mentioned the NHS workers, junior doctors, nurses, midwives, that kind of thing, are a brilliant demographic for HMOs. How would an LMPG member or a standard landlord go about marketing to that demographic? And are there contacts within the hospitals themselves that they could perhaps pitch at and become a preferred partner or preferred provider to?
That's a good point, Anthony. So yes, so we do some of the above, which is my preferred method is to leverage as much as possible, because why the heck are we doing this? I don't want to be that person who's that self-employed person who's doing everything themselves. That's not the point of doing this. The point of doing this is have a bit of some more time, some flexibility. So what I'm saying is, first is letting agents. Now, typically in each town, you'll find at least one, maybe two, that are focused on the demographic that you're working with. So it's about finding that one or two who can actually manage it. You know, other letting agents will say they can manage it, however, they really can't. So the key is finding that one. One of the ways you find that is you ask them. So it's a very simple question, very under the radar, actually. So I tend to ask them, so, you know, your portfolio, you know, what would you say is over, 50% of your portfolio? How many of your portfolio, what sort of percentage of your portfolio is focused on key workers, for example? So very easily you can find that out. And if it's below 20%, then that's probably not a good letting agent for what you're wanting to do. If it's more than 20%, then that's a great way. So letting agents is one. Another way that you can do it, some of my students do it this way. We like letting agents, but some of my students, what they do is they will put up notices with the permission of the hospitals on their notice boards in their workspaces. So people that are looking for accommodation, they know that you have property to rent. And you can get permission from the hospitals to actually do that. Sometimes you pay a little bit of money for that. Sometimes they'll just let you do it. So that's another great way. And the third way, which happens, but it's a bit of a longer term way of doing it, is referral. So as you start building up your niche, you'll start building up your little brand, a little cluster as you're doing this, and people will start referring you, recommending your properties, because they'll understand you've got nice, clean, quality properties that are very functional, and your communication is really good, and they'll become your advocate for you. So that's the third way of doing it, although that takes a bit of time to do. So hope I'm answering your question there. Yeah, so that's a yeah. Okay. Shall we another question, or should we carry on?
Well, I'll follow up
I've
then.
got a question.
Oh, here we go. Go on.
Hello. Yeah, I've got a question. I mean, one of the profiles, Cam, can you hear me?
I can hear you. So I didn't catch your name.
Tony.
Hey, Tony.
Yeah, so I'm not confusing with Anthony. So, I mean, one of the things is you mentioned housing benefit tenants, but of course in the small print, and they have hidden it very well in the new bill, is that housing benefit arrears will not count as arrears, as a ground to get your property back. So under the new bill, and it's already in there, they can owe you tens of thousands of pounds in housing benefit arrears that will not count as arrears for taking any action against them. So how do you get around that?
Yeah, Tony, actually, you're absolutely correct. You're not wrong at all. That is true. So I need to be clearer. So now, like I say, there are going to be niches for different people. So we don't house benefit tenants in our HMOs. What we have done is we have housed social providers. So these are things we've tested with some of our HMOs. So social, when I say social providers, so for example, Lewisham Council in London. So some of our properties, we gave it to them. We have properties in Kent, which were HMOs, and they rented those out. Our tenant wasn't actually the local housing allowance person, although they were getting LHA or universal credit. It was actually the Lewisham Council, if that makes sense. So the rent comes from Lewisham Council in this instance, rather than coming from the individual tenants. So all I'm saying is, again, I'm just a little bit opinionated on how we do things. So, this is the way that we work with that. So the arrears doesn't happen. Actually, it works like clockwork. The rent comes in every month because it's in this instance, the Lewisham Council that's actually paying the rent.
Okay.
If I explained that right.
It works with Lewisham Council. Does it work with any? I mean, I tried that sort of thing about 25, 30 years ago. And
Yeah.
it worked for a couple of months, and then the council just stopped paying and refused to have anything to do with it. But obviously, Lewisham Council must be a good one.
Well, I mean, they're all much the same, being honest, right? So, you know, there'll be things you have to navigate through, like, you know, if you don't understand the, you know, they do things like, you know, we want an asbestos report randomly, you know, so you got to do this asbestos report and things like that. So they'll, you know, they'll give you things to do. However, you can navigate through the thing. But in terms of the rental, it does work very well. I mean, just hang around with us, Tony. I mean, you know, I'm happy to share with you more after this as well, you know, so.
Please do, because we're looking to either sell all our HMOs or find another way to do them, because quite frankly, the way the stuff coming in with the renters reform bill is going to make it very difficult to make a profit. I mean, you must have come across the MSSP ones where they're extending the breathing space so that all that the tenant's got to do is saying they're suffering mental stress, and as a landlord, it will be illegal for you to even remind them that they owe you money, let alone demand it.
Tony, there is so much we got to cover. There is so much to share. Really is. We, you know, yeah. I mean, I meet really good people like yourself. They come along sometimes. Sometimes they do some of my trainings. Some of them come along a bit skeptical sometimes, being honest with you. And by the end of the day, it's like, oh my God, I wish I knew this earlier. But you know, there's so much to cover.
Well, yeah, that's what I want to do. I want to learn, because I want somebody to show me a reason I should hang on to the properties rather than get rid of them and get the hell out of it.
Well, that's exactly what I'm doing, which is staying in, and
Thank
happy
you.
to show you exactly what we're doing, you know, by personal experience for sure.
Really appreciate that. Thank you very much. Thank you.
You're welcome. Good question though, by the way, like the technical question on that side of things. Okay, so moving forward then, there are different models. Now, so, you know, you've got to think about what works for you. Just, you know, just like Tony's saying, so different methods, different ways. So you've got different tenant profiles. You've also got to, you know, find the right model that works for you. So the right tenant profile for the right model. Now, there are 5 key HMO models here. I won't go into all of that right now because we will be here for a good hour or so extra. But you know, these all work, and these are I've tested all of these. And we have all of these types of properties. My students, number of them, I don't have any monster HMOs, 10+ rooms. A number of my students like that, so I never stop anyone from doing what they want to be doing. You know, I'll guide them through it. So all the 5 models work. You just literally got to choose the one that works for you. Now, my personal favorite is the first one. The first one and the second one are my personal favorites, and I'll explain why. See, people tend to be in property investing, either they give up, or what happens is they get bigger and find a bigger unit and find a bigger unit and they find a bigger unit and they find a bigger unit. And for some reason, they think that's scaling up. However, actually, when you assess that correctly, that is not scaling up. You know, that is just creating more risk and more concern. And sometimes, you know, it's, you know, they lose all what they made in the first place. My view of scaling up is doing what you're doing well right now, or if you're not doing it well, you know, do it in a better way. Yeah, maybe you need to pivot a little bit, and then doing more of what you're doing and do it more effectively, if that makes sense. So, you know, rather than having, you know, although we do developments and all that kind of stuff, we'll be focusing on HMOs today. And it's one of our strategies, income producing strategy. So rather than, you know, doing, like what I said, how about doing the same thing, but doing it really well, really effectively, and having a number of these? In my view, that is scaling up, if I'm making some sense there. Also, if you're like me, you're probably the most de-risked person possible, and at the same time, the most active. So I love the under the radar, as we call it at Premier Property, 3 to 4 bedrooms and 4 to 5 bedroom models. Now, on the right-hand side, you can actually see the income that you can produce from these. Now, these are worked examples, and these are average figures that we've taken from our own portfolios that are actually very genuine and very real and very doable. And this is not just turnover. This is actual net income that you can produce in the right areas with the right type of tenant profile, with the right type of model.
I didn't expect you to say that that was net income. I was sure you were going to say that was gross.
Net. If you do it correctly, that's net.
Including agency fees.
Everything.
Ah.
with more time, we ain't got time today, but with more time, I'll show you some, we'll go into even more detail of these. Happy to show you real examples with rent rolls. Everything, of course, I'm sharing with you is very practical. So yeah, we've averaged the figures out. So obviously, I haven't put £6,722, for example. We've averaged them out, but you're in this ballpark. So I like these, and the reason we like these is, first of all, they bring lovely net income, and also on top of this, they are very de-risked. So, for example, what happens if a borough? What happens if you go in a university and the university decides to move the campus? What are you going to do? Yeah, and in fact, that's happened, isn't it? In always get these two towns mixed up, Nottingham or Northampton. Which one is it, team?
It happened there about 3 years ago.
Yeah, so Northampton. So it happened. So unfortunately, the landlords that had worked all the numbers out on just HMOs, they were stuck because they'd worked the numbers out and it didn't work as a buy-to-let. So what we do is we always make sure that the 3 to 4 and the 4 to 5 bedrooms, if they had to be turned back into normal rentals, normal meaning into normal buy-to-let rentals, do the numbers still work for you? So the buy-to-let becomes the backstop, if I'm making sense here. So in this way, you can always win and always get it right, if that makes sense. So this is the way we do it. So for that reason, we love the 3 to 4 rooms. Also, one of the things you'll find about HMOs, by the way, are we having an honest conversation? Just type in yes or no. Is it PC or non-PC?
We've got a lot of people on here, but let's try and keep it light.
Right. Oh, does that mean non-PC then? All right. So you'll see people on the forums. You see on various property forums with people showing off their lovely, cushions and all that kind of stuff, and they'll mention they're making 2.5K income and great. But what they don't mention is the amount of capital expenditure that they've sucked into that property. They don't mention that 300 to 350 grand, £50,000 has gone into that property. That's the thing. So with these types of models that we're doing here, we minimize the expense and we maximize the return. And I'll show you a real example of this, of what I mean by this right now. So here you can see a floor plan. Yeah. Now, if you look at this floor plan, here, you don't need, the mistake people make is they start knocking down walls, they start doing extra work or creating wraparound extensions and going into the loft. That's the last thing that you want to be doing, because that money, I say to myself, I'd rather invest that in me, or I'd rather buy another purchase with that property. So what we do at Premier is we will always work within the curtilage of the property, and we'll also work with the property. I'll explain what I mean. So if you look at this floor plan, here you've got the ground floor. You can see the staircase that goes upstairs, and if you look at the ground floor, you've got the living room there, you've got the dining room, and you've got a bathroom downstairs, and you've got a kitchen laundry. Now that living room can very easily be repurposed as a bedroom. The key numbers is 6.52 square meters, which is mandatory. So that living room there is more than 6.52 square meters. It's got 2 nice sized windows, and very easily that becomes a bedroom. You haven't knocked down any walls. There isn't great amounts of work to be done. Yes, you've got to upskill, you've got to get the legislation right. However, it's not any major work. It doesn't need building control. It doesn't need any of that. When you go upstairs, you can notice the staircase is, in this plan, you can see that it's set in such a way, it nicely leads upstairs. You've got the 1 bedroom, 2 bedrooms, and 3 bedrooms. And as you can see, it's also got another bathroom and WC in there as well. Now, when you look at this, this is beautiful for a 4-bedroom under the radar HMO. With minimal effect, you can really turn this very quickly into this. So, people are trawling through Rightmove. Now Rightmove actually becomes a purpose, becomes useful, because you can look for floor plans just like this, if I'm making some sense here for you. And like what I say, we've actually got 7 different floor plans that we have, and we always work within the curtilage of the property, which minimizes your capital expenditure. Also, there's a common sense approach. If you've got 4 people living in a property, we're all human, we've got to provide, I would suggest we provide good accommodation, of course. So 4 people sharing 1 bathroom is just about borderline acceptable. However, 4 people with 2 bathrooms and 2 WCs is real comfort. Hopefully you agree with me here. Yeah. So these are things that you can be looking for. You can be looking at floor plans like this. This is just one example. And really, to be fair, today what we've done is we have touched the tip of the iceberg when it comes to HMOs. There's a lot more ongoing learning, and hang around with us, like what I say. Happy to share more with you. We just need more time together. All these things that you can see in front of your screen, you can just take a quick photo of that if you like. How do you secure deals? How do you get discounts, which you can get right now? How do you invest remotely, with a bit of peace of mind, because that's important. We do the same thing. I live in London. We invest in areas which are like 200 miles away from us. How do we do that? So there's ways to do that. Measuring the viability of a HMO. Does it actually work? Getting it right first time. And so on. You can see it right in front of you. So as we're here at LMPG, and Anthony's been very kind to invite me here, what I'm going to do for you is this. Nothing for you to buy, really. Absolutely free, as a compliment, as a thank you for being part of LMPG. I mean, by the way, I'm a member as well. Yeah. So here you have a workshop that we're doing, and this workshop, it should be the figure that you can see here, but it's absolutely free for you as you're here right now. You can register. There's a link there. You can do this right now as we're taking questions, and I'll read it out once for you. It'll be in the chat box as well. That is bit. Bless you.
Sorry about that.
bit.ly/Premier 234. And what we'll do is happy to spend 4 evenings with you, 4 evenings. Happy to spend 4 one-hour slots with you. And in this instance, it will be between the dates of the Monday, June 12th to the 15th. So that's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, around lunchtime. So 12:30 to 1:30. So if you would like to join and learn more about this, then just hang out with us. We'll also send you some workbooks as well by email as well once you register. Yeah, so that's there for you.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Cam. As you say, it did feel very much that we were scraping the top of the iceberg, but I think otherwise we might have been here all night, despite how quickly you are talking. Thank you so much. I think there's been a bit of a political conversation going on, as an aside, as you're talking, and it's unsurprising in a way, with the recent renters reform bill coming out, but also the changes in interest rates, the kind of ongoing recession, not a recession situation, cost of living crisis that we're in. And I think that's why this webinar has proved so popular with LMPG members, because all of a sudden strategies that were stacking up brilliantly a year ago, 2 years ago, even throughout COVID, there wasn't this kind of struggle, and now looking not so viable. And HMOs are kind of still going strong. They're still profitable. There's still a way of investing in property and doing it the right way, of course, as you mentioned. And actually, it is an investment. It's not just throwing money at the wall and getting headaches for nothing. So I can understand, you mentioned at the beginning, you'll only talk about strategies that you invest in yourself. Of course, HMOs I think are going to be, I don't want to necessarily call them the next big thing, because as you said, they've been going around for 30, 40, 50 years, however long. But there's definitely an increased focus on them at the minute. I just want to go through a couple of questions myself, and then we can throw it back over to a couple of members if you want to jump on. I noticed John already unmuted himself in preparation to sneeze, so you'll be first up, and then we'll throw it back over to Tony as well, because I'm sure he's got a lot more to say. But to begin with, I just want to start with your tenancy profiles. So is that what you called them? Was it something different?
Yeah, tenancy profiles. Yeah.
Yeah.
Profile, how you profile your tenant to make sure it's the like in any business, right? To make sure your customer is correct for what you're doing, or you're correct for what your customer wants.
Yeah. So kind of your ideal customer in a way, the demographic that you're going for. And we mentioned key workers, students, young professionals, and LHA tenants, benefit tenants. My question is, you've got that in your head. At what point are you deciding, okay, this is for let's say, young professionals, are you searching for the property with that in mind? Are you looking for deals with that in mind? Or do you kind of get halfway through it and you think, okay, bloody hell, now I need to figure out who this is for? And does it affect the finish, or is it just the way that you market the property at the end, and whichever the letting agents are best around your area, or around the area of the property, to market to those kinds of people?
Yeah, and it's a good question. So it is all upfront. So all of this is a top-down approach, which starts right at the beginning. So I've got this board here, so I might as well use it, right? So I'll put it on here. So what we do is we will start ideally with either the tenant profile, or if your area specific, and there's reasons why you got to be in a specific area, you will start with the area. Ideally, the tenant profile. So you start with the tenant profile here. Now that you know that you're dealing with that specific tenant profile, you would then look for an area where that tenant profile will live. So for example, let's just use students as an example, if that's okay. So the tenant profile is university students. Well, then you got to look for a university town that you've got properties within 15 minutes, ideally walking distance. So it kind of helps you to refine that. So once you've done that, then it's about finding the properties at the right price. And actually, before you find properties at the right price, the next thing is to find the properties that fit the profile for what you're requiring. Like I've shown you, for example, one of our under the radar examples. So you look for the property to fit what you're wanting to do. So that's the next thing. And then after that, you then negotiate the price. So learning how to deal with estate agents, learning how to have direct to vendor leaflets, and a number of strategies that we have, for example, at Premier. How are you going to get that property to you? Tired landlords, unfortunately, selling off their portfolios. Like I showed you right at the beginning, selling off their Mayfairs. So you got that there, and then you marry all that in, and that's how it works. Now there's a bit more, and the more is what we do is we value engineer the refurbishment down as well. So we reduce the amount of money that is required to actually do the refurb. You want to reduce the cost the best that you can.
Of course.
That's value engineering. So we'll typically, or my students will typically get, 25 to 30% reduction in their costs just by being slightly smarter and doing things in a slightly different way, to reduce the costs.
Completely. And yeah, there's always a balance to be had, isn't there? Of there's two ways of reducing costs, and one of them is by putting in a load of crap. But the trouble is, you're not adding value. You're not adding value to the property and able to market it at if you're you mentioned co-living earlier on. Now that as a phrase started cropping up to me about 5 years ago. When I first heard it, I was like, well, what on earth is going on? And now it's everywhere. I was talking to another company today who says, no, we don't do HMOs. We only do co-living, because co-living is here and HMOs are here. But in actual fact, it's the same property, but it looks a lot nicer. It's professionally photographed. The tenants are sexier, whatever it is, that sets this standard. But you can't put your property at this standard and market it at this standard and just cross your fingers and get away with it. So there is definitely a balance to be had there.
Yeah, absolutely. And that time is over. I think people that are doing the average thing, they're the ones that are unfortunately leaving the property space. And it's so easy to professionalize all at the same time.
I would completely agree again there. We were worried that a lot of landlords, a lot of LMPG members might be leaving the market, but it's actually the older generation, I would say, that just, they're used to not doing a lot and getting a lot for it. And then all of a sudden it just doesn't look as good anymore. So I'm just going to go through a couple of the questions that we've had throughout.
Anthony, you're almost 30, right? So what you got to remember is when you get to 50, I'm 53 now, 52 now. So when you get to 50, you understand that 50 is a new 21.
Well, I'll let you know when I get there.
Right.
Is that 21 or 101?
You got two Anthonys to face now.
Yeah, when you've been in property as long as I have, you feel like you're 151. Trust me.
So just jumping over to the student market very quickly, Rappaway has written, the student market might be fundamentally changing if rolling contracts come with the new rental reform bill. Now, is that something that's cropped up with your own portfolio yet? Is it something that's on your radar?
Absolutely. So look, we're on the cutting edge of this because, you know, we're doing it for our own portfolio, and I'm also training people on this, so people trust me. So this is just literally when the Renters Reform Bill came out just a week and a half ago or so. I visited one of my areas, and I visited the top letting agents in the area that are managing our properties. You know, the big CEOs. I sat in their back offices. I even did a little YouTube video on this, by the way, you know, just randomly. And I assessed, I said, what are you going to do? You know, what are you going to do about the Renters Reform Bill? What are you going to do about the Renters Reform Bill? What are you going to do about the Renters Reform Bill? We sat down in offices with my 5 trusted guides as well. We sat down and said, right, you know, how are we going to overcome this? And actually, I share it with our community. So, you know, the Renters Reform Bill, I don't want to sound too positive, but, you know, it is a half glass full scenario. Yeah. So if you look at the Renters Reform Bill specifically, yeah, first of all, the Renters Reform Bill that's come in, it's not going to be legislated for the next approximately 12 to 18 months anyway. That's the first thing we've got to keep in mind. So it's not coming in straight away. And in the Renters Reform Bill, there are actually, strangely, some really good things for landlords. So let's think about this, right? So here's some specifics. Am I going on a bit, or is this okay?
This is fine. This is exactly what we're asking.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so
we want to hear something good. I've read it so many
Yeah.
times, it's coming out my ears, and I've yet to see this, but go on.
Well, you know, media, they love it, don't they? They need to sell whatever they've got to sell, right? So it's the media. Okay, but the truth is,
I'm reading the bill, not the media.
right? Okay, right. So section 21, of course, that has gone, but that is non-fault evictions, of course, right? So non-fault evictions. Now, if you are a business person, yeah, you do not want to raise your rent over the market, what the market dictates, and at the same time, you don't want to get rid of your customer. That really is for landlords that were being rogue. They were rogue landlords, so they were charging people well over what it should be. You know, it's all good to increase rents. We increase our rents, but they were charging well over in areas where, you know, that tenant hasn't got a chance of getting another property, typically in large cities like London. And secondly, they were saying if there's some maintenance required, they say, oh well, we're not going to fix the maintenance. You can, you know, here you go. Here's your section 21. So that was happening. So that was rogue landlords. But, you know, all of us here, you know, I like to think, you know, we're reasonable people, and these people are your customers. So we're not going to do that. You know, the tenant is required, if you're renting property, to get the rental. You know, that's the thing. So section 21, I mean, not really concerned about that one. So that one goes out the window. Now, the new amalgamation of with section 8. So I was discussing with Ben as well, Ben Beadle from the NRLA, good friends of ours as well. And, you know, he was saying much the same. It's always good to get confirmation. And when it comes to the section 8, the new version, now they've left this to the last minute. So we're still working this one out. They haven't given us all the detail. However, what I'm hearing on the grapevine is that eviction process is actually going to become easier. That's what we're hearing. The detail hasn't come out yet. Yeah? So that's to come. Let's see what happens. It's so early. Then we got the bit about having pets. Now, you don't have to take a tenant on with pets. All they're saying is that you cannot say no pets. You can still have a vetting process. You can still discuss with the tenant, for example, do you even like pets? Have you ever had a pet in your life? You know, you can put these extra questions in through the vetting process. You know, just like we had before, but the vetting becomes even more key before you give that tenant your property. So there is that. Now, there's going to be a lot of marketing change when it comes to tenants, the letting agents, because of what I was hearing is they're going to have to change all their marketing because in there it says no pets. So they're going to change all that wherever it says that. Yeah. So that really, to a certain extent, isn't a concern. And, you know, if you're like me, you've had tenants where later down the line, they've put the pets in without your say so. You try evicting them. You know, you're not in a worse situation than now, really, in real terms. Yeah. Because it does happen on the odd occasion. So that isn't really that much of a concern. And if it is, get some pet insurance, you know, like I say, vet them properly. There's all these things that we can do. Then it comes to, what's the other bit that's there? So the evictions there, Section 8 there. Oh yes, so you not being able to evict the tenant. Well, I'm okay with that because the truth is, I want my customer to stay. I'm okay with that. The whole point of the investment is that there is a customer in there. There's a tenant in there to provide the rental. Now, the other thing that I was a little bit concerned about was the periodic tenancy that's coming into play. Just for clarity, what that means is your tenant can move in, so all the ASTs are going, and that's a fact, and the new tenancies will be periodic after 2 months. So your tenant could move in, and after 2 months, could then say, right, I'm moving. Now, I thought about this one, and I looked at all of our portfolio. You know, we got 3 digits in our portfolio, and I thought, let me see, where is it that the tenants ever actually left? It's usually someone who's playing a little bit of a game, maybe to get a council place or so on, something like that. So they're playing the system a little bit. That happens on the odd occasion. Or it's someone where the maintenance, so sometimes we'll get we'll get various quotes in, and the tradespeople don't turn up on time, and it takes a little bit longer. So the tenant moves because they're a little bit frustrated that the maintenance wasn't done in time. So really, when you assess it properly, no one's really going to want to leave a reasonably good quality property where your landlord's looking after you. The rent is a good rent, it's a reasonable rent, in market, like within the market, and your maintenance is done in the adequate time, or it's at least communicated. Your tenant's really not going to leave. And also, I assessed the Scottish market. There's been a lot going on the last couple of weeks at Premier. So if you look at the Scottish market, this came back in that came into force for them back in 2019. And if you look at the Scottish market when it came along, a lot of landlords actually left the market, especially student landlords. They started renting to individual ASDs, and there was a big void that was created. And there were all these students trying to find spaces, and even some of them couldn't get on courses because they didn't have a place to stay in. So if you are a professional landlord and you've got, like I've been sharing some of what I've shared with you, if you've got all of that, we're going to be sharing more in the workshop, by the way, of course. If you've got all of that in place, well, of course you're going to rent your property. Yeah. And your tenant, is highly unlikely to leave, although some will, but very highly unlikely as long as your property is reasonable. And, you put into place some of the things I've just discussed. So, yeah, there's a renters reform bill coming in. Landlords are leaving the market, but the ones that are leaving are the ones that are not willing to upskill. People that are willing to upskill, there is a way. And look, let's be honest. In your experience and my experience, you got to keep adapting, and this is the next level of adaptation.
Okay, run one by me then, Cam. I've listened to you patiently about this. First of all, I'll correct you. There's no such thing as no fault evictions. They were accelerated possession proceedings. This is propaganda put about by the various tenant groups. But anyhow, the point is, it's not about using it, it's about having it. In 54 years, I've used Section 21 twice. Okay, but how often would I need to use something similar once a tenant knows there are no consequences for not paying me? Then the landscape shifts enormously. So let's not forget that. I like to drive fast. The reason I don't is the speed limits. I know I get fined and points on my license. When I go to Germany, I stick my foot down. I'm doing many, 150 miles an hour. I don't do it in Britain, not because I don't want to, because there's laws stopping me. Once the tenants don't have to pay you, what are you going to do? Section 8, they're not going to speed up the cup. We know the courts are now, we're talking 2 years to get a hearing. How long is it going to take under Section 8 to get them out? They come out things like, oh, we'll make it quicker for antisocial behaviour. 54 years, I've never, ever, ever had to evict a tenant for antisocial behaviour in 54 years and thousands of tenants. So that's a red herring. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but how often does it seriously happen that they're bad enough to want to evict them for antisocial behaviour? It's never happened to me in all those years and thousands of tenants. So that's a red herring. My worry is having the power over your own property to control your own property and be able to have enough power to say to tenants, listen, if you don't pay, I'll work with you, I'll try and help you, but ultimately you will be evicted. You no longer have that power. That has been taken away from you. And this is the thin end of the wedge. They will bring in new things with Section 8 that are making it even more difficult. You know, they're already saying housing benefit arrears will not count as arrears. How ridiculous is that? Tell a landlord who's going bankrupt and having a house repossessed by the building society, it's not arrears.
Yeah, Tony, look, you know, there's things in place. So one of the things that, you know, I'm aware of is with the Section 8, that they're changing that. However, if a tenant doesn't pay, and as you quite rightly say, you normally work it out anyway. So it's not normally your normal tenant, right? So you get the odd one or two, right? So depending on your portfolio. But if you do get that scenario, you, as I understand it, you are still able to evict them. And you can use the new version of the Section 8 to do that, because there is a grounds for tenants, if they haven't paid the rent and they're in arrears, then you can still go ahead with that if you need to. That's still in force, as I understand it. That's not going away.
Got to be two times, more than two months in 3 years. Would you want to hang on to a non-paying tenant for 3 years?
Yeah, agreed. Yes. So, yeah. So, look, any business, in any kind of business, there's going to be points of pilferage. There's going to be points where you're going to lose some money, right? You know, you got to really make a decision, right? So if that is not for that person, then forget a property. You know, if we can count, if we can accept that over a large period of time, over a large portfolio, you know, you're going to get the odd case where you're going to evict a tenant, you know, and know that there is a process, because there is a process, that's fact, to evict them. That is still there. You can do that. So, you know, it's really a decision you can make, right? I mean, I don't know anything else than property that allows us to do what we're doing. I wouldn't know anything. You know, I wouldn't know what I'd be doing if I wasn't doing property, because property creates income. It creates passive. It creates the income. It creates the uplift. It allows you to create a proper business, and it allows you to drive fast cars, because I like fast cars as well.
Yeah, I take your point. Having said that, we started buying in Europe a few years ago, and at first it was costing me a bit more because I've got to have it managed over there. But now with everything coming in, there isn't the toxic atmosphere over there. You know, there will be people who don't like landlords over there, but it's nothing like it is in Britain. You know, nothing. And that's the worry. It's not how bad it's going to be after the Rent Reform Bill. It's how much worse it's going to get after that. We're going to have a change of government. They're already talking about forcing people to reduce rents, not just capping them, forcing them to reduce it. And they're not saying, no, we're not going to force you to reduce it below your costs. They're not committing to that, no.
Yeah,
so
you're quite right. So, you know, things like that, we've got to make sure there's a buffer. We've got to, you know, always, we're always making sure the people that we train, even to make sure there's a buffer there, to make sure you've got enough income so things like that happen. You know, you can still account for that over a period of time. As you're aware, you've been in the business for 50 odd years. This is becoming the Tony Show, by the way. I love it.
So sorry, I'd love somebody else to enter in.
I love it. It's great, right? So, you know, over 50 odd years, you know that the value of that property is going to go up. So if you wanted to, or if someone wanted to, they could decide not to refinance and go higher up in your leverage. The leverage will drop over time. Inflation will erode any finance that you've got over a period of time. So, you know, there's a number of benefits, but, you know, it's a case of half glass full or half glass empty. Mine is half glass full practically. And
I know he's used to be, but we've seen more fundamental changes.
Tony, I'm going to jump in here now, mate, because we're pressed for time. And as much as I like to see Cam put under pressure, and I really, really do, because he said that he only uses LMPG for boilers, I'm going to jump over to a couple of other questions now, mate. Is that okay? So, just going back to your presentation earlier on, you were talking about, where is it? Mortgages. Where is it? The mortgage question. The benefit tenants. So your customers are not the tenants. They're not the ones that are paying you.
Yeah. So I, you know, just to be fair to everybody, I'm not. So everyone will have their niches. So, you know, rather than just say, here's our niche, these are niches that we've tested and actually work. So that's what I'm saying. So I'm not saying some of you might want to deal with benefit tenants directly. We don't. What I'm saying is the way that it can work. The landlord is your social.
It's a very specific question, just about the way that you do it. And I'm not saying that one way is right and one way is not. But do you have to have a commercial mortgage to be able to do that?
Interesting question. Not necessarily. So of course I can't give you financial advice. However, if you speak to your mortgage broker, there are products that are actually now coming into the market for this, because it's becoming again a bit of a flavor of the year, if you like. So the social housing side of things. So there's a number of lenders that are coming into the market that are providing leases, products for leases and so on for residential properties. So they're not necessarily commercial mortgages as such. They've got a commercial element to them, but they are your buy-to-let lenders who refined it towards this type of product, towards that type of tenant profile. So what I'm saying is, there are lenders that will allow you to lend on leases, as I understand it. But check that with your mortgage broker. That's
really interesting. Final one then, and I'll see if anyone else wants to stick their hand up as well. You can do that, by the way. I think at the bottom of the screen you can put your hand up, or just stick it in the chat, and I can unmute you if you like. So just going back to your floor plan, you're talking about you kept calling it, I don't know what the word was, but within the shell of the property.
Under the radar, within the curtilage.
Yeah, there you go. So you're not adding an extension, you're not knocking any walls down, you're making the job as simple as possible. Now, you said that the floor plan that you had, and could we go back to the floor plan?
Yeah, sure.
You said that you won't need to do any kind of real hard work to turn that. That's a kind of an ideal situation to turn that into an under the radar HMO. Now, we've got a question here about the living room, because you're turning the living room into a bedroom, of course, but that is a thoroughfare to get through to the dining room and kitchen. So what are you doing in that instance?
Yeah, so usually, if you look at this example, you've got the living room, which will have its own door there. As you can see near the staircase, there's a door for that. There'll be a door for the living room, and there'll be sometimes we create a passageway. I don't know if you can see my cursor. If I do this, can you see my cursor?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, this is like a worked example, right? So here, as you're entering the entrance, we might put a passageway here, within the guidelines. So there'll be a passageway that becomes a living room. That passageway then goes into the dining room. So with this example, there'll be the staircase going up, but there's a space, I believe, to actually go into the dining room area. We do a number of these. We'll literally put a partition up in the living room, and the dining room stays as a dining room. So they've got communal space, but the front room does become a separate area.
Okay. Yeah, I think I've got that. So I'm just going to put it out to everyone just before we all head off then. So I'm sure we've all got dinners to eat and that kind of thing. Have we got any more questions at all? Anyone want to unmute themselves? Tony, I'm not talking about you, I'm afraid. Anyone else want to jump in and put Cam on the spot? I really like it. I think
I've got a question.
Oh, go on, Liam.
Please. Thanks. At what point does it become under building regulations to manage a HMO? Is it a certain number of bedrooms, or do you just need a HMO license? As a bare minimum?
Yeah, that's a good question. Is that Liam? Is it? I can
see
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great question. So with building control, it really only comes into when you're looking at the models, usually after the 5. So if I jump back to the models, I mean, we've been doing more on the workshop anyway, but I'll show you the models there.
Thanks.
These 5 models here. So the en-suites, for example. So usually the 3 and 4 and the 4 and 5 building regs is not normally required unless you're having to move a wall or something for whatever reason. Building regs, in my experience, usually come into the en-suites. So with the en-suites, when we're doing en-suites, we don't normally do part en-suite. We'll go full out and we'll make the whole property all en-suites. In that instance, one of the things that investors miss is the drainage, and that's really important. Sadly, some of them find that out after they've done the whole refurb, and when they flush the toilets, they don't flush, for example. So for things like this, for en-suites, you need drainage. And when you need drainage, you're going to need building control. When building control come in, they'll assess the drainage, and what they'll do is they'll take over the whole project, and they'll say, right, what are you doing in this room? What are you doing here? What are you doing here? And they will want you know, all the spec 2 building regulations scenarios. So en suites and above is a scenario. Sui generis again, monster HMOs again. So these are where building control is really coming in. Liam, I hope I'm answering your question.
Yeah, that's perfect. Because I've
Yeah.
heard instances before about fire doors in HMOs, you know. Yeah, a bit
It's
of
not a
a,
structural change. No, I think you'd be okay with that.
okay.
Yeah.
Appreciate your help. Thank
It's
you.
a fair question, though. Good question to clarify.
Okay,
Yeah.
lovely. Well, look, we're running a little bit over. We thought we'd get this done by about 8 o'clock, but thank you so much for joining us all tonight. There's been a couple more questions coming through, which I'll send over to Cam after today. Cam, it's been brilliant having you back on. Apart from the bit where you said that you only use LMPG for boilers, I've not forgotten that. Now, one of the final questions that was coming in, which is just, it's great that we've got you here tonight, but you're only here for an hour and a half. How do our members contact you outside of tonight?
First of all, thanks for having me. It's been a lot of fun. We had a lot of fun there today, haven't we? A lot of information as well. Well, we've got the workshop, so you can join us on the workshop. That's one way. If you want to email me, you can email me at cam with a K at premierproperty.co.uk. Yeah, or come along to some of our evening networking events, which is Premier Property Club. We run a couple of them.
You're on other social media as well, aren't you? I've seen your face popping up on my Instagram from time to time.
Yeah, you can join our Facebook community, which is Premier Property. You just search for the group Premier Property. We'll invite you in. Just let us know you've been here. So yeah, just hang out or come and see us at HQ. I mean, I'm standing in our HQ here, which is I'm on the training suite at the moment, and we've got offices downstairs. Come and see us. Come and have a coffee. We're in London in South Woodford.
Look, thanks again for joining us tonight. Not just you, but everyone else that's joined us. We'll be adding the recording of this webinar to the LMPG website probably about next week. But if you've got any other questions between now and then, of course, Cam's just given his details, but you can find me on Facebook and give us a call on the office 01455 234499. That's on the website, and my email is Anthony ANTHONY at lmpg.co.uk. Thanks again, and have a great evening, everyone. Cheers now.
Thanks, then. Bye then. See you later.